Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. I'm Dan Hall. This is a program about things seen out of the corner of one's eye, about shadows and what lurks in those shadows. This is a program about the unexplained and the unexplainable.
So it's the middle of October. Outside, the leaves are turning, the temperature's dipping down into the 30s at night. I don't know about you, but when things like that happen, I start thinking about Halloween. So our guest tonight, Isaac and Amber, and I will screw up your last name. It looks like it should be Cowles, but it's Cowles.
It's Cowles.
Right, okay. Isaac and Amber Cowles are some people that I've known for quite a while through an affiliation with a ghost hunting group that we're all in. And we thought that it would be nice to have them on our program tonight to talk about ghost hunting and what drew them to that and maybe some of their experiences. And of course we have Dave Jinks, one of our Anomalies crew members here today. Dave, are you doing okay today? Are you ready for Halloween?
Doing well. Looking forward to spooky things and a lively discussion about the weird. That's what we like here.
Right, that defines who we are. And our other compatriot, Sarah, is off in a play. She's doing rehearsals for a play, so she's not able to join us today. But first of all, I'd like to welcome Amber and Isaac to the program. Thanks for being
Hello.
on.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Now, we've interviewed Isaac in a previous episode before, and weren't able to include Amber in that episode. So I'd like to kind of shift the focus a little bit about what we talk about. Not so much about Isaac's experiences as sensitive, but more along the lines of what it's like to be a ghost investigator. So let's start with that basic question for both of you. Why investigate hauntings? Why investigate ghosts? What draws you to that?
I think we touched base on this a little bit when I was on last time about how I got into how I met Dan.
Why don't you give us a little summary of the experiences you had earlier?
Because our program with Isaac before was one of the most popular. Maybe it was up there. So
was it?
It was
that's
very
cool.
popular, yes, and I think it was a great...
So it's the middle of October. Outside, the leaves are turning, the temperature's dipping down into the 30s at night. I don't know about you, but when things like that happen, I start thinking about Halloween. So our guest tonight, Isaac and Amber, and I will screw up your last name. It looks like it should be Cowles, but it's Cowles.
It's Cowles.
Right, okay. Isaac and Amber Cowles are some people that I've known for quite a while through an affiliation with a ghost hunting group that we're all in. And we thought that it would be nice to have them on our program tonight to talk about ghost hunting and what drew them to that and maybe some of their experiences. And of course we have Dave Jinks, one of our Anomalies crew members here today. Dave, are you doing okay today? Are you ready for Halloween?
Doing well. Looking forward to spooky things and a lively discussion about the weird. That's what we like here.
Right, that defines who we are. And our other compatriot, Sarah, is off in a play. She's doing rehearsals for a play, so she's not able to join us today. But first of all, I'd like to welcome Amber and Isaac to the program. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Now, we've interviewed Isaac in a previous episode before, and weren't able to include Amber in that episode. So I'd like to kind of shift the focus a little bit about what we talk about. Not so much about Isaac's experiences as sensitive, but more along the lines of what it's like to be a ghost investigator. So let's start with that basic question for both of you. Why investigate hauntings? Why investigate ghosts? What draws you to that?
I think we touched base on this a little bit when I was on last time about how I got into how I met Dan.
Why don't you give us a little summary of the experiences you had earlier?
Because our program with Isaac before was one of the most popular. Maybe it was up there. So
was it?
It was
that's
very
cool.
popular, yes. And
so give us the cliff notes of that.
The reason I met Dan through, I found a website in our local area that had an organization called Olympia Paranormal Research Group. I was having experiences that I couldn't explain. I've had them since I was little, but I was, as we were just talking earlier today, I was at a pretty easy point in my life. I didn't have a lot of stress. A lot of other things happening in my life, and when that happens, my sensitivity increases, and it became difficult for me to maintain a daily life without having these sensitivities kind of manifesting and making it difficult to go through day to day without feeling, I don't know spirits or getting place memory when I'd go into places, to have lunch or have a cup of coffee. So I jumped on the internet to find an organization that I thought would maybe help me understand what it was I was going through, and it turns out it was a paranormal research group that I kind of joined into. They took me under their wing and said, we don't really know what it is either, but it sounds fascinating, and we'll just kind of do it all together, and we'll make this an experience. And I said, great. And Amber decided to kind of be my sidekick in that adventure at the beginning, and then she got into it, and then really then it was the two of us as part of the group rather than just her kind of tailing along me and being supportive.
So Amber, your involvement was then to just be supportive of Isaac and be a part of that, or was there something that you were drawn to about investigating hauntings and ghosts?
So Isaac and I really hadn't been dating very long, maybe 6 months, when he started telling me about the Blue Lady and the other experiences that he had, and it was, I wouldn't say shocking, but when you're early on in a relationship, you're like, well, is this a deal breaker?
Yeah.
Is this something I want to put up with?
Yeah.
Is this
can
too
I
weird?
handle this?
Yeah.
And I decided to see where that would go. So, when he was really kind of struggling with it and he was looking for outlets and resources and he found OPRG, I was interested in supporting him, whatever that might look like, and we struck out into a new adventure together, which was meeting new people, new experiences, and I was learning about things that were new for me. So investigating wouldn't have been something I would have dived into by myself. Isaac definitely opened that door for me, one that I wouldn't have opened on my own.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I mean. Initially, she was being supportive and just saying, hey, I'll kind of follow you into this and we'll see where it leads. And then as we got more involved into the group, she really found her own position in the group and then we were just two separate people who happened to be together who were in this into this research group. So yeah.
Did you find that there were advantages and or disadvantages of being in a group doing investigations versus just doing those same activities on your own?
You mean as a married couple? Or I guess...
Or just part of a group. In other words, would it be easier to have been ghost investigators as a married couple or as part of a group? Were there advantages or disadvantages to either one?
I would say that the advantage was being in a group of like-minded people who kind of encourage each other. So we probably wouldn't have had any of those experiences on our own because we would have to have planned those events on our own and done those things. And I don't know that the motivation was quite there for the two of us to figure out all the details and kind of push ahead without it. So having the group, we kind of all took a piece and took on a piece of responsibility to make all of it happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of logistics that, Dan, as you know, when you're doing something like an investigation, if you're going to be using equipment or tools or you're trying to use a specific type of investigating, there's a lot of logistics that go into it. And I can only imagine it being one or two people, how time consuming that can be.
Just the connections to people. I mean,
yeah.
We didn't have any connections to anybody.
No.
You have lots of connections to interesting people, Dan.
Yeah, that's true. You really do.
Well, that's the thing. I think that's a compliment. I'm going to take it as a compliment.
Yeah, it is.
Talk more about that process. So some people would say, well, how do you conduct an investigation into a haunting? What would you say about that? What's the process like? And do you need people with different roles in the group to carry out different functions, or what would you say about that?
Yeah, I think I think in something like that, it really takes one chunk of the group. I feel benefits from having very analytical people, very organized people who can draw up very logical questions. They can organize the questions in a way that makes it very easy for the person or the people that you're interviewing for if somebody approaches, like with OPRG, they would either call or email and say, hey, something really goofy is going on. We'd like to have you guys come out. It's really nice to have somebody very organized and very logical to handle that aspect of it, doing the phone calls, doing the emails, shooting creating the questionnaires, and then taking all the information and compiling it down and then giving it to those of us, I'm pointing at myself, who aren't as much so, who can take those, read through them, and then proceed forward with what it is that we think we can provide for them, whether it's bringing a bunch of equipment, whether it's maybe just another interview or two, or, maybe they need somebody like me who has a sensitivity to come in and kind of read the area. So it benefits having multiple different types of personalities, all with different things that they're good at, I think is kind of essential for having something when you're dealing with the public and people and their personal homes and their personal property, and dealing with something that is completely unknown like the paranormal.
Amber, would you add anything to that? In a group, do you really find different members of the group bringing certain things to the table that, with their ability to use equipment or their just personal skill set? And is that a necessary part of doing a ghost investigation?
Anything I would add to that? So I just having different backgrounds and people approach things in different ways that doesn't occur to you. So from a investigator perspective, absolutely having a large group with different backgrounds and different skill sets is, I would say, imperative to coming up with any sort of good, solid conclusion or evidence, or I don't know if that's the right word. But as far as investigating or exploring on our own, I think we're as equipped as we need to be. But to do it for somebody else to come up with a more conclusive outcome than having a group of people bring different things to the table is useful.
Yeah, when you're doing something for yourself, you can do it for your own expectations or just for your own practice or your own sense of adventure. When somebody contacts you and says, hey man, I've got this crazy shit happening in my house, crazy stuff happening in my house, I lost the train of thought. Because I said shit, and then I thought,
That's okay.
It's good for ratings.
Yes. People like it when we swear.
Well, I'd like to interject here because Isaac said something a few minutes ago about having the analytical guy in the room, and I always think of myself as that guy. And I've been doing this with Dan probably long enough for him to agree that I'm kind of the guy who's like, and so I've got all these questions here. I don't want to jump the gun because you both mentioned that having a big palette of backgrounds and experiences and expertises and all that really adds, of course, that's true for every academic endeavor or sports team or whatever, where a group of people get together and try towards a common goal. And my question is, let's not forget that Isaac, and he's a sensitive. We had a whole show on him before.
We did.
But I view him as being a key cog in any investigation that involves something that's not easily categorized. It's something that involves sensitivity, obviously. This is something that you mentioned equipment, but what equipment really can you use at a ghost hunting location or an investigation? I don't know that there's any consensus on what would a ghost hunting team need in their arsenal of scientific tools. Mm-hmm. I think Isaac would be the biggest weapon in that arsenal I don't want to miss that point. But part of that question is for Amber is, have you felt any of what Isaac feels just by being his wife? Have you tuned into any of that, or have you always just been off on the side, like going to Isaac, that's his talent, I trust what he is perceiving and telling me? But my question is, have you experienced any of those things just by virtue of being his partner? And would you admit to it is the other part of that. Because he's a scientific tool himself.
I am a tool. I'm a major tool.
In the best way we can use that term.
So I'd like to hear about some of Amber's experiences as far as tuning into what he's tuning into, if that's happened.
I haven't personally experienced anything I would consider paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
I believe my husband, I believe his experiences and his feelings, and I know that it is real for him, and therefore it's real for me in that context.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that I experienced anything through him as in my own personal experiences, but he definitely explains things in to me, and I feel like I get a perspective that others might not. In particular, when we were at Western, I mean, I was there with him when he was experiencing all those things, and he was explaining it to me, and I could see it in my head, and wouldn't say I could feel it, but I got a sense for it, I guess. So I haven't experienced anything paranormal.
You also know him so well that...
I didn't at the time.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a little early.
It was 6-8 months into our relationship at that point.
Do you want to recount that story at Western just in case? I mean, if somebody hasn't heard the previous...
Yeah, this is a Halloween show. We need some scary stuff.
Well, I think this taps into
some disturbing.
Tell us about that
accounts.
experience at Western from your standpoint, and then Isaac can talk about it from his if he wants.
It was a long time ago, but
It was.
When was
I mean, it was really...
What year?
Well, we weren't married yet, so
Yeah.
2010?
It was... it was. It was fall of 2010.
8 years ago.
September-ish,
Somewhere around
maybe?
there, right?
Yeah, because I remember wearing that heavy jacket, so...
So it was one of our first outings with the group and OPRG, and I didn't really have much of an expectation, just kind of going to go look around, do a little field trip. We weren't taking readings or anything.
And this was at
Western
State, which is...
cemetery for Western State Hospital up in by Fort Steilacoom.
And is it active now? Is there a
As
hospital now? I mean, is there a facility now that is active?
They bury people who die at Western State Hospital. They still bury them in that cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah. This was an existing cemetery that has been a cemetery for 100 years or thereabout, and there's also the grounds of where one of the main hospital buildings used to stand, and it's no longer there.
That you were in a place where the hospital used to be.
Yeah.
And this is not a regular hospital. This is a hospital for...
Mentally.
It's an asylum.
It was basically an asylum.
So it was a place where you can expect that the emotions were intense and the dysfunction, for lack of a better term, was probably maximized. And so if there's a place where a sensitive person would pick up some remnant emotion, states, because you do tend to pick up. If I recall, is it intense on both sides of the spectrum? I mean, happiness versus despair.
Yeah, it's just if you think about in your own life, what are the most intense emotions you express or that you feel in your life? Well, sadness is clearly hugely intense, and laughter, a sense of joy can be very powerful. And, some of the other ones can kind of, depending on the situation, can come and go, but your average everyday emotions are probably pretty mild and pretty mellow. So typically the stuff that I pick up on are just the intense that, like I've explained before, it's kind of like when you're cooking, things like garlic and onions and fish, they're all very intense flavors. And even the next day after you're done, you've eaten it, you've gone to bed, you come in, you can't taste the fish, you taste the garlic, but you come back into your kitchen and it just reeks like garlic and fish. It's the same kind of a situation. It lingers.
Which gets more into the theory behind why Because I'm sure some of our listeners are saying, "Well, I don't even believe in ghosts. What are they spending all this time talking about ghosts? They haven't proven anything. They haven't. At least that would be my thought. Again, being the analytical guy. But if you have the model that you just described, which is a great model, I haven't thought about it that way. That's something that everyone can relate to. It's a remnant. Mm-hmm. It's a indication of the presence of something that was even stronger at a moment, but it's still there.
Yeah.
The lingering part. So
maybe what we really ought to do, and I was thinking about before the interview, thinking about how to do this. I kind of started out with what kind of equipment do you need to do a ghost investigation? Mm-hmm. Maybe you need to be more basic. What is a ghost? What are you investigating? When you guys did an investigation, what were you investigating? What evidence were you trying to find? And that could be as simple as listing off a bunch of symptoms that your house is haunted. I don't know. What would you say about that?
And also, how do you apply your sensitivities, which are not necessarily of ghosts? Mm-hmm. I mean, at least in our first discussion, I don't know that we ever even mentioned the word ghost. It was more feelings about position. I remember position of even furniture or something, right?
Yeah.
You knew where a certain piece of furniture was. Now, how does that relate to human?
Yeah.
Was it the human presence on that couch that left the imprint? Or do you just pick up on objects and spaces and the relationship between objects and where they reside? Or is it tied to human activity? I mean, what do you think in your mind? What are you picking up on? And then, of course, launch into ghosts, because that's really the subject here.
It's a very good question. And
And can you have a ghost of something other than a person? I mean, maybe you can have ghost of an object or an animal.
Sure. Yeah. I think when it came to my role in OPRG, for me, the reason I contacted them was because I was trying to figure out what was going on with me and my sensitivity. So I was learning as we were going through all of these field trips that we would go on, and when people would call and say, "Hey, something's going on. Would you guys be willing to come to my house and help us along?" So for the group, the other members of the group, they would say, "I'm going to bring, my cell phone because it has a recorder on it, a voice recorder on it. I'm going to bring a flashlight. I'm going to bring warm clothes, especially because, we typically would go do stuff at night, and in the fall and winter in the Pacific Northwest. So even in spring, it was still cold at night, And they would bring their laptops and, cameras. I don't know if anybody had any night vision cameras or anything specialized necessarily like that. But
flashlights.
Yeah, flashlights. But microphones, because what they were going for is they're trying to get, by setting up a microphone and plugging it into their laptop, they're trying to get answers. They would sit down and they would ask questions. Is there anybody here with us tonight? Is there anybody in this house that isn't of, the living human realm? Is there, like yada yada yada, and trying to get answers to the questions via the microphone that maybe the human ear can't hear.
So are you talking about electronic voice phenomena?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So what do you think of that? What is it supposedly, and what do you think of it? Is it evidence of the haunting or a ghost?
Me personally, I think that it can be, because I think, much like we were just having a discussion, that wasn't part of this earlier today, is that I think people have different types of frequencies that they can hear. And I think whether the voice is residual energy that I pick up on, that's in a time loop, and it just continues to repeat itself, but the energy level is so small and it's so quiet that the average person can't hear, except when they have a really nice high quality microphone that can pick up sound and quality that the human ear just can't do by itself. Or if it's there's an intelligent spirit, ghost, demon, whatever it is that you're going for, that might actually be there in some physical form or another that is actually creating a voice, and they're actually answering you. That's real, it's just so quiet you can't hear it.
So ghost would be the interactive part of that. Mm-hmm. When you could actually have a conversation with someone or something.
Which would be the difference between an intelligent haunting or a residual haunting. Mm-hmm. It's the difference. And a residual haunting, or what's known as a residual haunting, is it doesn't matter if you're there or not. There's an energy that is just on a loop. It's there and it's part of the environment, regardless if you're there asking questions or not. Whereas an intelligent haunting is a something that knows that you're there and it's reacting to you, whether positively or negatively.
Do you recall in either of your experiences getting good EVPs where you could definitely hear what the voice or the source of the voice was saying, or what could you say about that?
I don't think so. There may have been one.
Yeah, I feel like there was a handful of them that was like, we'd get it and go, ooh, that's interesting. I wonder, and maybe it was a word or two, or it was a thump or a groan or a drag or something in the background that didn't seem logical. It didn't seem right. But as far as, somebody, hey, Amber, from some...
Hey, from the dark side.
Yeah, in some strange accent or something. I don't think we ever experienced something that...
Or any, like voices that responded to our questions.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, sometimes there were noises or things.
And why do you think this phenomenon is so coy? Why is it so shy, again, for lack of a better term? Is that because, a skeptic would argue because it doesn't exist, mm-hmm. and in order for us, the believers, to keep believing, we need to take any little thing we can find and say, that's unexplained, so therefore it's evidence for this. I tend to argue from the model perspective, it's perfectly reasonable what you're saying. To me, residual energy, there's across the spectrum, there's energy from almost imperceptible all the way to, X-ray emissions or whatever.
Right.
Super powerful. So there is a spectrum. It's perfectly reasonable for me that there's a subtle energy realm that only with intense focus do we even notice,
mm-hmm.
So it's reasonable to me, but why do you think this phenomenon is so hard to pin down? Is it because we just don't have the right instruments, tools? Is it because it doesn't want to be discovered?
What I learned more than anything from my time investigating the paranormal is that the paranormal doesn't act or do when you want it to. We would be in places where there was activity the day before or just recently or whatever, and we would show up and have a very quiet night. And we would come away with it not defeated, but sort of like, we didn't really prove anything, but we didn't disprove anything either. And you can't.
Very frustrating.
From
perspective of someone who wants to, and that brings. I don't want to sidetrack the discussion, but I did just watch Hunt for the Skinwalker. Did you peruse that one, Dan?
I have
you guys seen that?
No.
It
sounds fascinating,
though. The epitome of what Amber is saying, in that this was a team of high-powered scientists with every tool at their disposal, with they were bent on, again, defeating this phenomenon every way they could. And it toyed with them. It made them look like fools, they'd have all their instruments pointed here, and the light would flash over here, and then they'd look here, and then it would go, and they would mess with stuff, it would move their equipment, some of the accounts are incredible. Their equipment, I can't remember specifically, but something was put in a tree, one of their pieces of equipment, they set it here. They came back, and I think it may have been the rancher, and one of his, I don't think it was a scientific equipment, but he came back, and it was, dozens of feet up in the tree.
It was a post hole digger.
Yeah, that's...
He was putting up a fence.
And the other one that was they talked about a lot in great detail was that the rancher's bulls, he had 4 bulls that they always kept them penned in the same place, of course. And these are very aggressive, heavy animals, like thousands of pounds. He came back and they were gone. Like, where, who could steal bulls? And he discovered that they had been shoved into like a mobile, not a mobile home. Well, it's kind of a mobile office space, a shelter. The bulls somehow had been squeezed into one end of this enclosure, and the lock was still locked from the outside. I think he said it had cobwebs on it or something, so it was obvious it had not been opened.
That's crazy, wow.
And these bulls were crammed in here, and he said to even get one bull, because it was a step up into it, to even get one bull to go up and get in there would have been impossible, but yet somehow he had 4 of them crammed in together. When they looked in, the bulls looked like they were stunned. I mean, they didn't know what they were doing there. And then they woke up and they went crazy. They kicked out the back door, and they,
wow.
came charging out of there. And anyway, stuff like that. That's obviously a very extreme example. But the point is that this group of scientists, with all their PhDs and everything else, they were defeated, like you said, by this phenomenon, whatever it is. So it has that trickster quality inherently, and I don't know why. That's part of it that fascinates me, is that why is it so hard to pin down even the most basic aspect of it?
Yeah.
Maybe Isaac has a theory on that too.
I think I've explained it this way a couple of times before. That the more I think about it, it's the most logical way I can explain it. From my experience, when you're dealing with the paranormal, when you're in the paranormal world, there's a lot of different stuff. But when you're talking specifically about hauntings, about ghosts, spirits, residual energy, whatever, I think the most important part of that is the presence of energy. So I think it's reasonably well documented that those who have done research with, let's just say, ghosts for the moment, they require a certain amount of energy to manifest or to speak or to do, kind of anything really. I mean, if you think about it in a scientific perspective, it makes sense because, we as humans were mostly water and electricity. Our bodies won't work without electricity coming from all parts of our body and charging and sparking and making our body function the way it needs to. So with that being the case, with ghosts or spirits requiring energy to really make themselves apparent to us, I believe that, from my experience, certain types of weather phenomenons, certain types of the year, if just different air quality, there's a lot of things that exist that are prone to having energy surrounding you. If you're in a lightning storm, if during a lightning storm, I know that I've read even in other parts of the country that the static is so bad that their hair will stand up on end and the hair on their arms will go up. That, from what I experience, would be a situation in which a paranormal activity or a paranormal experience would be highest, because there's enough energy for whatever that thing is to draw from and to happen. And some days are just more charged than others. And I think that...
Didn't you have an experience at our house during a lightning storm?
Yeah. Yeah, many years ago, we still lived at a little townhouse.
No,
we
I
had...
thought it was at our house. No.
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one.
One of many.
Well, there's enough of them that I forgot about that one. The first time I experienced something during a lightning, we had a really major lightning storm in maybe 2012 or 13, something along those lines. And it was for the Pacific Northwest. We don't get a lot of lightning because it's just not dry enough here, but it was an epic lightning event. And yeah, we were outside leaning up against the car, and we were watching this lightning storm, and I heard a man whisper in my ear. And I don't know if I remember I wrote it down, what he said. I went back in the house and wrote it down. I don't remember what he said, but it was clear as day. I turned to my right, jumped because I thought there was somebody standing next to us, and we were so enveloped in watching the lightning that I didn't realize there was a man standing next to me. He whispered in my ear, just clear as day, and I wish I would have remembered what he said, but and then at our new old house, about a year ago, we had just a regular storm, and during a moment where we had a bunch of lightning, I heard, and the dogs heard, actually, too. Our dogs freaked out. There was somebody walking around the house. We heard footsteps, and then a male voice kind of mumbling as if he was maybe on the phone or talking to somebody with his back away from our direction. And the dogs jumped up, and they took off running into the kitchen and running towards the sound. And then I thought, well, somebody's here, so I went in there, and the dogs were looking around, and then we heard it again from the living room, so the dogs tore off and took off to the living room, running towards whoever this person was that they clearly heard. So that was that was the first real experience I've had in our current house we live in, and I had forgotten about that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Maybe you'd want to take a little time to talk about some of the more. This is we're talking about evidence, and we're not really sure evidence of what. But maybe you'd want to take a little bit of time to talk about some of the cases that you investigated, your memories from some of those cases with the Olympic Paranormal Research Group. Did we
want to go back to Western?
Well, yeah, because I'm not so sure we completed that story.
No, we just started, and then
let's go back there.
No, that's fine. But that was part of. I mean, that would lead right into what you're.
Okay, let's do it. I think you're on the right track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you want to?
So, it was just going to be a regular field trip to Western, and which was intriguing in and of itself. I'd never been there before. And as a group, we kind of walked in and kind of was looking around, and then we kind of split up into pairs or groups, and Isaac and I started walking towards the building, and he was telling me he was experiencing things, and he started crying. Like, he was very upset, and I have only seen Isaac cry maybe 2 other times in the years that I've known him, so that was very uncharacteristic.
When you're trying to date a girl 6 months into it, and you start uncontrollably sobbing. Yeah, it was like, oh yeah, I'm making points here.
That's how it was, and it was. I'm sure it was very awkward for him.
It was embarrassing.
Yeah, not just a bunch of strangers, because we were new to the group, but just new to us, and so it was very unique. But he was expressing that it wasn't him, he wasn't sad. It was.
Good cover, I
see.
I'm not a win. That's a pretty good
I'm fine. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm fine.
I'm just channeling.
Yeah. But and as we kind of walked closer, it got more intense, and then you called it, and we started walking back down, and people started noticing that he was having a hard time, and were asking about it. But
yeah, and just to clarify for who the people are listening, the building doesn't exist there. We were walking towards
ruins.
There was a couple of ruins, and then just a giant flat spot of where this building used to exist. So that's what you refer. That's what you're referring to? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there, and I remember getting images of the building, and
yes,
I remember.
You were explaining.
I remember, because I was part of that activity that day. I wasn't with you, but I remember later on you drew a picture of that building. That was pretty damn accurate to what the building is going to look like.
Yeah, and I was going to say, as far as, you were asked earlier, if you have experienced anything through me or being around me, that would have been a pretty compelling piece of evidence. I guess evidence, but compelling, I imagine, for you. When we left that...
I just knew you were a nut job.
That event. Well,
that's what it proved.
When we left there, Amber, I was just a mess, and I just needed to detune. I thought, let's go have a pint. Just go hit a little tavern. Let's go have a pint before we go home. Let me de-stress, detune a little bit. And so I drew a picture of what the memories that were coming to me, and I gave it to Amber. And then we went home and we Googled it, or you had taken some pictures of.
There were like plaques of informational plaques around, and I had taken pictures of things without you being present.
Yeah,
because we tried to shield Isaac from details that may compromise an investigation.
Yeah,
that was probably the first experience with that.
Because I was looking for validity as much as anybody else was, so I didn't want.
Right.
So can you describe to those of us who are not sensitive? What is it like watching still frames? Is it like movie? Does it vary in terms of the intensity of what you're seeing in your mind? How much of it is feel versus clarity in your mind? What does that experience involve? Can you put it in a way that somebody like me could understand? Because my visualization skills, I don't think are good. I can't close my eyes and picture an apple or something.
Right.
It's just cloudy. It's nothing. I cannot materialize an object in my mind. So when you're having these experiences, are you seeing clearly?
I'm having
visions.
I'm having memories, and so the closest thing when I was researching all this stuff on my own before we joined the group and after and during and everything, the closest thing I can find is something called place memory, and so that's the idea of picking up residual energy, most of the time residual energy, and they come to me as a form of a memory. So, you say it's hard hard for you to have an image of an apple in your head. It's very foggy. But can you bring up memories of, let's say, Christmases when you were young, or maybe your grandparents' house, or maybe a house you lived in when you grew up? Or do you have that ability to draw up a memory?
Well, it's complicated, as you were explaining, because your memory is part feeling, it's part imagery, it's part made up stuff. I'm not. It's not a photo image of whatever happened, and it may be based on pictures in a photo album. I mean, so you got all those sorts of things that go in.
Yeah.
Personally, and I've read a little bit about the ability to visualize, and there is definitely a spectrum. Some people can just conjure up a crystal clear image of whatever, and other people like me are at the other end. It's kind of murky, foggy. I know what an apple looks like, but I'm not, unless you're in that state. There's a state, what is it called, right before sleep? I wish I could remember the name of the state, where your brain is in this, whatever the condition,
I know what you're talking about too. I can't think of the name of it. Yeah.
I'll remember it in a little bit. Anyway, so no, to answer your question, I cannot. I really cannot personally picture. I don't know, Dan. How would you, or Amber? I mean, how do you think you visualize things? Are you good at it?
Well, there's
think about it.
There's the difference though. Is this isn't a visualization? This isn't me. Like with Western State when we went there, I wasn't trying to imagine what it would look like. And then I used logic or previous knowledge or anything and think, the building probably looked like this because it was an old building. It wasn't using imagery, it was a memory. So it was, as we walked up the hill and got closer to the building, I felt as though I had been there before. And I was remembering, wait a minute, I've done this walk before. And the closer I got, the more I was remembering the sadness of being taken there because I knew what was coming. I knew I couldn't be at home, I couldn't be with my family, I had to be at this place I didn't want to be at.
And was it kind of like a deja vu feeling?
Yeah, that's close, yeah. That's close.
But how do you differentiate between your own memory and somebody else's?
So here's the one thing I haven't been able to explain well enough to get people to understand. It's that for me, when I think about things, they have a feeling and they feel differently in my head. So if I have a memory, if I sit here and I think about the house we live in and I picture the house we currently live in, feels different than the memory I was getting of what what Western State Hospital looked like. It feels different. And it's the feels different part. People go, well, what? Unless I have a headache, I don't feel anything in my head at all. That's the part I can't explain. But it feels like it comes from a different place. So it almost has a physical sensation.
So there is a cue that will let you know.
Yes, absolutely. The way it feels, the way it comes in, feels different than, I've actually been here before, and this is my own memory, like, oh crap, I forgot I was here 7 years ago. Versus I'm picking up on energy that's coming to me in form of a memory.
Right. And so you're walking across this abandoned, I don't know if it's abandoned, but it's no longer existing structure, and you had memories of did you have memories of the wall, the structure itself, or did you just tune into the memories of presumably the inmate, or I don't know what you call inmate.
Patient.
It's more like a prisoner situation.
That took me a while to figure that out, honestly, because I wasn't sure when Amber was saying I was crying and I was worked up and I was getting tense. That was a first, and quite honestly, I think that's maybe only happened even partially that strong, maybe one or two other times ever. That was an intense experience. And that wasn't my, like she had said, that wasn't my I wasn't crying. I was simply holding the hand of my girlfriend, my new girlfriend at the time, walking up to this, to this empty pad, and I was having all of these emotions that I wasn't feeling, but I was experiencing. It's so hard to explain.
Yeah.
And the memories I was having, I knew weren't mine. I knew that they were somebody else's, something else's.
And so how deep into that we're presuming it's another person, you're tapping into the residual energy because of the intensity. How can you explore within those memories and those feelings? Can you explore connections that they had? How deep could you go? I know when I mentioned deja vu, when I feel the deja vu coming on, sometimes I tell myself I'm going to try to predict what happens next because I feel the deja vu. If I've really had it before, I should be able to tell.
Project what's going to happen.
I should be able to tell who's going to be on the TV if I look at it. Of course, it never works. But
the best I can do is when I feel it coming on, the best I can do is to try to tune out anything else I hear or feel and try to write it out. That's the best I can do. And hopefully it'll kind of take me for a ride and I'll get more and more information and more memories and more visuals. And, I didn't do this on purpose when we were at the Western State, but as we got closer to it, I was becoming more emotional. But once we got around, I started to lead you because I started to get images and I'm like, I want to go around here. So I started, let's go this way. And if I remember remembering this correctly, I led you around the front. And as we were walking up the stairs, all of a sudden I could see the building, up in front of me in a memory, not physically. It wasn't that the sun went away and amber went away like on movies, that wasn't the case at all. I was remembering looking up and having this building block the sunlight and be right there, and then walking in and seeing the colors. And we walked in the door, we took a right, and we were going down a hallway. And that's when, I think that's when I said, I gotta go. It's like, it became so intense that I felt like I was going to lose my mind. No, lose my sense of current reality. Like I was starting
into. That's kind of what I was.
Yeah, like
bleed into.
I was.
Person or
I was starting to lose. I was holding onto her hand, but I could feel the sensation of her hand going away, and the being outside was almost completely gone. I thought I was in a building. Because I was completely
What was the story of this
inundated.
Person that you
no idea
channeled? I mean, you said you felt sorrow? Was it because you thought you'd never get out, or you see your family?
It was.
See your family.
I was being taken there, and I didn't want to, but I was being taken there, and I felt like I was being dropped off with no promise of ever coming back. I don't know if it was a male or I don't know if it was male or female. I don't know any backstory. I don't know any names. I don't have a memory of, a specific nurse or a doctor coming up and being like, hi, so-and-so. I don't have any of that. But other than just the incredibly intense memory that got so bad that I with what I felt I had left, I told Amber I was get the hell out of here.
Going back to the terminology that we used earlier in this conversation. So we talked about residual hauntings versus or place memories versus interactive hauntings. So how would you characterize that?
How do you mean?
Were you interacting with any spirits?
Oh.
And what I'm thinking about is you're really talking about you were afraid that reality was going to change, that you wouldn't be there with Amber. You would actually be back in that hospital, either interacting with somebody or being a patient in that hospital. That creates kind of a question in my mind was, were you time traveling? Were you...
That's interesting, yeah. Or somehow crossing into a dimension, or
right.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the stuff that could keep you up at night.
Yeah,
it really can.
So in other words, it's kind of hard to categorize.
Yeah, it is.
What actually did happen to you?
Yeah, it is. It's very hard to, and it's easy for me when I think of time traveling or crossing dimensions. You go. Right. Yeah, as I'm just sitting here talking about having memories of something that may or may not have happened to a person that may or may not have existed at a location 80 years prior to that. I mean, so I think maybe Amber, I won't speak for her, but I think maybe Amber may have experienced that sense of where do you draw the line in your own mind between, oh, this is totally possible. So ghosts, Bigfoot, UFOs, and then go, right, Mothman? Yeah, right, come on. So,
I think if you're like Dan and me,
We belong at Western State Hospital.
the lines blur, and I really think that the scientific community, whatever that really is trending that way. Finally, in that there are multiple realities. Everything is energy. There aren't boundaries that are so hard and fast that you can't consider that there's something to the left or right of it, or above or below, or whatever. As above, so below. It's not unreasonable to me, definitely, to see somebody who has the right tuner. I consider you to have a different tuner than the rest of us. Some of us are stuck on one radio station. Your dial moves left or right, and you will tune. Now, the question is, will you tune all the way over to the next station? Can you come back?
Right.
And how disturbing is that to you to be like that? And I remember in our first interview that you spoke about when you were a kid, you just thought, well, of course, it's normal.
Yeah.
For everyone has those feelings, and then you realize at some point that no, that's not normal. Most kids around me have no idea what I'm talking about. That kind of scares you, I'm sure.
It does, and at the beginning, the whole reason that we contacted OPRG to begin with was I was searching for help. I was looking for answers. And after talking to Amber about it, she was the one who said, well, see if there's anybody around. See if there's anybody locally you can talk to about it. See if there's, and really we couldn't. It was just, we found this group, and I thought, I don't know, we'll see.
And so the Western experience was that it kind of came to a head at that point. You said, I've got to get out. I've got to be tuned.
Yeah. But it
almost, I feel like it was almost the opposite. It was like, I've got to get this under control.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I think if the Western State situation had happened after even being in the group a couple of years, and we had a bunch of investigations under our belt, and we felt like I really had this thing dialed in, that still would have been a monumental lifetime. That was such an experience. Just in and of itself, let alone it was the first time that either one of us had an event with OPRG at all. It was the maiden voyage, so to speak. And so when we got done with that, I think both of us kind of went, "Oh shit, this is bigger than what we thought, and maybe we need to kind of maybe keep this path going and see where it leads us and see what else we can learn from." And being part of the group really taught me personally. It taught me a lot about it. It opened me up to opportunities to use my ability, and to kind of hone in on it and learn, oh, this didn't work, I'll try this next time, or this worked great, let's keep that one and get rid of this. It was definitely worthwhile, for sure, for me.
Amber, do you want to talk about any other cases besides what happened at the Western State Hospital that left an imprint on you as far as investigating the problem?
Do you have any poltergeists? Do you have any mean ghost, scary ghost things?
No.
That's probably
no, the one... so when we're done with an investigation, we presented our findings to the client or the group if it was something we were doing for our own curiosity. And so while the rest of us were trying to come up with quantifiable evidence, such as recordings or pictures or temperature changes or whatever the case may be, and then part of that presentation or consolidation of facts was Isaac's experience, and which is not quantifiable.
Yeah.
And one of those such experiences was the cemetery on Ruddle. Yeah. That was.
That's Mullen?
What is it?
Or is it Yelm Highway? Which?
No, I think it's
on
the Mullen and
Ruddle Church, the funeral home is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the old original.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So we went and did that investigation, and what stuck with me, and kind of scared me a little bit, is that Isaac said that a woman followed us, or...
Yeah, she followed us home.
Yeah. That was kind of creepy.
What woman?
I don't
Some
know.
random woman who not.
No, a
No, we
a
found.
spirit. Or...
Yeah, we found out who it was.
Oh, a spirit woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that gets more interesting.
Tell us a little bit more how.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what's interesting about having a sensitivity, and I think I talked about this on the last one. You know, somebody who's artistic, maybe they draw really well, but typically they also paint very well, and also they might even have a really nice voice, singing voice, or they might be able to play the guitar, or so. That being said, with somebody with a sensitivity, it's from what I've read is that typically it's not just one thing, black and white, and that's it. It's just this one thing they can do, and everything else doesn't. There's typically other little small trailing parts that are part of being sensitive. You pick up on other random stuff, or you can, whatever the case is. And in this case, it had nothing to do with place memory at all. Well, no, that's not true. Because while we were there, I was having some memories of events happening. I mean, the cemetery is a very sad place. There's a lot of crying, a lot of emotion wrapped up in that place. In cemeteries, just in general. So I was picking up on some sadness and some... I was getting a few memories of, I'm guessing, some funerals.
Yeah, I feel like for the investigation, for the most part, was a bust. Like, it wasn't
kind of
very
a bust,
eventful.
But it was pretty eventful for me. I was getting quite a bit that night. But then I was also getting memories, what felt like memories, but as it turns out, they weren't the same as having a place memory. That a young woman was there, and she was aware that I was there, and she was aware that I was picking up on things. She was almost like, oh, he can hear me, or he knows I'm here, and she was really excited about that. And it was a very, when I'm experiencing things, I'm not always aware of what's happening around me because I'm very inundated, and it's exhausting. So I rely on Amber a lot when I'm having experiences. I want to keep her near because she can help. I can spit things off to her, and she helps remind me of what was going on. Do you remember, by chance? Shaking her head. You don't remember what? Because there's a reason why she followed. I couldn't shake her. Like, she wouldn't. She wasn't bad. She wasn't.
Yeah, I don't remember it
Just
being
lonely.
She was. Yeah, she was.
Or
She was.
she wanted something.
Yeah, I felt like she was. It was important for her to get something across to me. I don't know, just that she existed, or that she wanted to say something to somebody, or just me, or maybe she was lonely, and she just, I don't want to get rid of this person that knows I'm here. I don't know what it is, but I couldn't shake her. I couldn't get her.
And we didn't go home, right? For that reason?
Couldn't. Yeah, we couldn't go home. Because when we left, the group that night, typically we all wrap up and we'd all go, that was great, or let's go get pancakes and go home, or let's all just, we'll call it the night and we'll all, And this one, it was a trickle out. A couple people would leave and then a couple more people would leave. And it was... It was only 3 of us left. It was you, me, and one of the other investigators. And she was kind of off on her own doing something. And she had just left when we decided to leave. And as we were leaving, I kept telling Amber, we left somebody behind. We can't, it's this, there's not everybody left. Somebody's still there. And I feel the need to get, to either walk through to make sure everybody's gone or whatever. And Amber's like, everybody's gone. The cars are all gone. The other investigator just left. I'm like, all right, man, I believe you and you're right, but we're leaving somebody behind. And as we left and we pulled out on the main drag, it was like every quarter mile. It was just, I have to turn around. I have to turn around. And then I started getting, I don't know, memories from her. And I was getting images, and I'm just like... And then it dawned on me that it's not that we left somebody behind, it's that she's with us. She's there. And she's what I'm experiencing. She's what I'm feeling. And...
That would be more like the interactive.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she was an intelligent, for sure. She knew what was going on. She knew that she was hanging on. And I don't know what we did. Did we stop, or did we turn around and go back for a minute, or did...
I think we went to Paxo.
Did we?
Because we talked about
I just had to shake it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, because...
Went to a bar, a restaurant or something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was late at night. Cause it was
late at night.
It was during the summer.
I don't... I don't know. I don't know what our thought... I think the main thought process was let's just not go home, because we don't know what's going on. We don't understand. So let's not just open our doors to this thing that won't let go of me. And I think, we just went and had a bite to eat and just talked about it and sat down, and I think I just felt it lifting. I don't know if it's... I don't know.
I'm curious about your idea of what a ghost is, really, and what are the possibilities. What you're in a unique position, to have more of a connection, direct connection. I can sit here and come up with models, but I don't have a feeling for which one. Are they transitional energy? Is it just a residual thing that's not really tied to any particular entity? It's just like a mirror image of something. Is it someone who really needs to make contact before they're allowed to pass through the gate? All those sorts of ideas. What do you think? What is a ghost?
I have no idea.
Well, that's disappointing.
I know. It's disappointing for me.
You have an idea.
I feel confident that I understand residual hauntings or residual spirits, residual ghosts. That makes sense to me. I can feel it, and I can say I really think this is leftover energy. It's energy in and of itself. It's energy, and it's so powerful and so potent that it's just here. It just lingers. I think I'm beginning to feel, the older I get and the more that I sit and dwell on this stuff, I'm beginning to feel that intelligent hauntings or like the woman at the cemetery we were just talking about, that they are a soul, which in my opinion is just the energy, it's the essence of a human, and it's just a ball of energy. That is, for some reason, has decided that either it doesn't want to go to wherever else is, or everyone else is in that same realm. This one is just strong enough that they don't want to let go of this one. Whether you're talking dimensions, maybe, or, if you believe in, there's heaven in the clouds and earth down here is for humans, and when you die you go to heaven, well then they've decided to stay for some reason, for a specific reason. Or if you believe that it's just different dimensions, really, when you die you just do a different dimension of what already exists, then theirs is just so strong that they're able to somehow intermingle when it's convenient or when they find it necessary. What it's made out of, I don't know. I don't know why there are things as ghosts. I don't know. I mean, and that's the frustrating part, is to be so tuned in to something that you can't touch.
You don't know, but you definitely
don't know.
I mean, you just described a model, a strong feeling about what would lead to that situation, which is really all my question was. Of course we can't know. I think that we've done shows on near-death experiences, and across the board you have people who have to they come back and they report, these are people who had heart attacks and have been dead for 20 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever, with no detectable heart rate or brain activity in some cases. And they come back and they say, most of them say, I was given a choice. There was a transition that I knew if I went beyond it, I had made the choice to go, but there was a very clear transition and they were given a choice. And some of them just say, I had no idea where I was. I was lost in the Netherland, Neverland, the Netherworld, not the Netherlands.
Lost in the Netherlands.
I was lost in Copenhagen.
Had something to do with the marijuana. Anyway, Lost in Netherlands.
That was good, dude.
I'll edit that out, maybe.
Leave it.
Anyway, there is a nether world. I think was the term I was looking for. And maybe, could it be that someone is lost in that for whatever reason? They didn't completely make the transition because of something unresolved, or because it's just a screw up of the fabric of reality. I mean, maybe God does make mistakes or something, or whatever you could argue. But that brings me to the last question I wanted to ask. Was that we have a veterinary hospital here. My wife is a veterinarian, and Isaac has done some work there because in his spare time he does carpentry and woodworking, and you made custom furniture, right? And so he came into our veterinary hospital to do some work, and it was great work. It's still holding up a few years later. But he also said we of course couldn't help but ask him if he had some feelings about I was thinking more along the lines of the animals, because we've had many hundreds, thousands of animals, go through there. Unfortunately, some of them end up transitioning into the Netherlands. And wouldn't be bad. I guess if there's a heaven on earth, maybe you could make the argument for that. But anyway, I was curious to, hear what his feelings were. And he did have a distinct impression. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that. I know you probably haven't been in there.
I haven't been in there since.
But do you remember what you...
I remember it was a man. His name was Everett.
That's right. I just want to remember if you... remembered the name.
Yeah, his name was Everett.
Yeah, so earlier I'd asked you, do you ever get a chance to kind of grab onto some loose threads when you're in the mind of someone else? And for some reason, you had a name, that came to you.
That's really rare, isn't it? That's rare that I get that...
And it's still with you.
Yeah.
It wasn't just pick a name and name the feeling. Right? It was something that specifically came to you that was poignant. It was there.
Yeah,
and
I can still picture him. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, not as clear.
I've been in many nights alone and been a little freaked out as a result. But,
Sorry, man.
Somebody worked with us, and she would go in. She started as a kennel attendant. Now she's a veterinarian, and I just heard she's getting married. Katie.
Oh, yeah,
Dan remembers Katie. Anyway, she used to tell me she'd go in to feed the boarding cats, and she would swear that there was somebody there. It wasn't just, I feel like some crazy guy's going to walk in on me at night, because we've had that happen too. That's why we always lock the front door. But she had a feeling. She's like, I think the place is haunted. Yeah. And so I go in there, and for the first many months after you said that, I didn't even think the name Everett when I went into work. I was like, I'm not going to conjure up anything.
I'm not going to,
just trying to get stuff done. I want to have a conversation with the dead tonight or something. But later, I did ask Everett to, let me know something about him. And
really?
I got nothing. So
yeah.
He doesn't want to talk to me apparently.
Well, and I don't even know. I can't tell you that, or at least I can't remember if that was a residual, if it was a memory, and it just so happened a name came with the memory, or if it was an intelligent high, and he was there, he was stuck there, whether he was connected with the building, or maybe there was something there before, and he was just kind of stuck on the property, or what the deal is. I honestly don't remember. But I do remember it was a man named Everett, probably late 50s, early 60s, and had a very, not so much father, but like a close uncle connection, kind of a thing. That he cared about what was happening, but not necessarily that deep of a connection like a father would to to their children.
Landlord, that feeling of someone watching over. Because I swear the original landlords of that. Business when we first opened it 20 years ago. When he first said it, I was like, I swear there was a guy named Jim, and it may have been Jim Everett was his name. I never checked it out.
It could be.
I should. But
I don't really know. I just it was a feeling of just kind of there and.
But I'm thinking maybe a landlord would have an interest in the business, but he wouldn't really have.
And see, that's the other thing I get asked a lot too is why do they hang out? Why would some if it is an intelligent haunting? Okay, then why are they there? Well, I don't know. I mean, did they stay there for somebody, and that person left, and they can't leave, and now they're just like, well, crap, I'm stuck here. Or like, damn it, or if it's residual, then why? I can't tell you other than it is.
Seem kind of mundane, doesn't it? I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially if you have an option to go on beyond, if there is a heaven and all that. I mean, why you're stuck in that transition, it just seems so boring, really. I mean, again, if you look at poltergeist, that's why I asked about poltergeist. I was hoping you had encountered some, especially when you mentioned the lightning and the electromagnetic.
No poltergeist. We did have one. Facet. We did do one. Investigation. And the guy that was there was not a good guy. Remember that? Yeah, he was not a good guy. And that was another,
Spirit.
yeah, that was not a good spirit. Yeah, for sure.
Which raises a question that I wanted, and maybe this is one to end on, because I know some time has been slipping by. It seemed like there's some liability issues in investigating ghosts.
Yeah.
And if somebody calls you up as a ghost hunter and says, I've got some weird stuff going on in my home and I want you to come check it out, can you address that issue of liability? And maybe, Amber, that's something you'd want to take on, what you should look for, what you should be doing as a ghost hunting group and what you shouldn't be doing as a ghost hunter.
That's a tall order. I would say what you shouldn't be doing is making any promises that you can affect change. I don't think we ever made any promises of that sort when we were doing it, because that's really, I think we would make referrals of that nature if people were looking for that type of help. But yeah, don't break stuff, follow the rules that have been given to you, and don't promise that you can affect change.
And keep your head on a swivel too. You can't you can't just stick your face into your camera hoping you're going to get something and walk down, and trip on a step and bust your leg. That's your own fault, and you can't expect it. Well, I was investigating their house and their step was crooked, so I fell and I broke my ankle.
So in that respect, is it a good idea, if you're considering being part of a ghost hunting group, to be, I don't want to say this, to market yourself as a group that can find out definitely what's going on in a house and resolve whatever's going on there? I kind of hear Amber saying that's not a good idea. So might it be good to stay away from investigating personal home haunting situations with the idea that the owners of that property or the owners of the home want it resolved, and you can't really promise that?
I'd say you just need to you need to draw very clear lines. You need to say to them, well, for one, you don't charge. That's another sticky situation that you can get yourself into when it comes to anything paranormal. Is you're doing this for the sake of either science, or you're doing this for the sake of your own personal fulfillment, or for helping others. Think of it as a not-for-profit volunteer group. So for one, don't charge money. That's going to eliminate a lot of headache, a lot of potential legal headache. And I think with something that you can't promise, like Amber was just saying, unless you can go to somebody and actually give them legitimate, not made up fake, just nonsense because you want to make money on it. But the way that the paranormal world is right now, there's a lot of unanswered questions. And until those are absolutely die hard, without a fact or without question, you can go and take this piece of machinery, go into this house and get this information, you cannot charge for it. So that's one. And two, you need to say, because of that, or maybe not necessarily because of it, but you're not being charged. We cannot promise you X, Y, and Z. We're volunteering. You're opening your house, let's say, for example. You're opening your home up to us so that, one, we can gain experience, and two, you might have a chance of getting some answers to some questions that you're wanting. None of that may happen. We may not gain any experience. You may not get any answers. It might be all of us simply getting not enough sleep the next day, spending all night up, drinking coffee, and sitting in your living room doing absolutely nothing. That's a huge chance of that happening. And as long as everybody's on the same page as far as there's no money involved, there's no promises being made, and that this is really just for the sake of doing, then I think go for it.
You know how whenever you call your doctor's office and they say, if you're experiencing a life-threatening emergency, hang up and dial 911.
Yeah.
Yeah, same kind of thing. If somebody contacts you and they're troubled and are not in a good way, that's not the time to go in and, for fun, investigate and see what you can come up with. That's the time to say, we're not problem solvers. You should seek somebody else if you need an exorcism, if you need
a mental health therapist,
a therapist,
right, whatever the case may be.
I'm interested. What kind of inquiries did you get? How does one know that they have a ghost? For one, I need you to help. Setting aside
that's a good question.
It kind of goes back to the symptoms of a haunting.
It really does. It really does. And I think, just to answer your question kind of not answering it really.
Well, just in your experience.
But just, I think that question brings up the point of anybody who's looking to start a paranormal group. One of the best things they can have is a very thorough pre-investigation questionnaire. And it may even include something along the lines of, do you or anybody currently living in your home have past experiences of mental health issues? Not name them, just yes or no. Is there currently going on? Is there any case, is there domestic violence going on in your house? Yes or no. Some simple questions once it's returned. If they're not willing to answer, I'm sorry.
Well, now the complicated
have a good day.
Up to me is that, are they mutually exclusive? Because
right.
We just spent the first hour or so talking about the intensity of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
My thought is that you could make a good case that that's when things do appear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's good to have the background, obviously, before you go in, but just because somebody might have had intense psychological issues or relationships, maybe that opens a door for a spirit to pop its head.
It absolutely does.
That may be the case, but it doesn't mean as an outsider it's something you want to jump into.
You don't want to expose yourself to
We definitely had people contact us that we chose not to investigate for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were just the more information we got about the situation, it was like, I don't know.
This doesn't seem like a safe thing to get involved in.
Yeah, there was at least 2 that I can think of that we just turned down.
Yeah.
Just didn't feel good about it.
Yeah. Or the people were fine, but every time we talked to them, their stories would change. Once it was, they think a cat's haunting their house, and then it goes from a cat to a parrot, and then the parrot turns into their Uncle Ned. And then, so from there you kind of like, well, they don't seem like a bad person, but clearly there's a few screws loose. Let's not, this might just be more like, they just want to feel like they're on TV and have people in their house with, cool instruments, and which, I can't fault people for that, but that doesn't help them, and it doesn't help the research group. It doesn't help anything. And I would say, on a side note to all of this, anybody listening, is that if you get into this and you are there in somebody's home and you're helping them, it is wise to never give away your personal information to said individuals, because there is a chance that said individuals will call you at 3 a.m. On a substance of choice and keep you on the phone for 2.5 hours rambling about things that the substance of choice has made them be fearful of.
While your wife sleeps
soundly. And was completely unaware of what was going on. It's like,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, come back into bed at dawn. Where are you?
Where have you been?
Well,
in the living room.
By the minute. You say, I will listen to you as long as you want to talk, but I need a credit card number.
That also kind of actually opened the door, the reality to the group when I brought this information to them at our next meeting. It kind of like, oh, okay, you know what, maybe we need to really kind of filter our questionnaire and our liability, our idea of liability, and because this guy was not of sound mind, and he wasn't possessed by anything other than drugs, and it was a bad situation. So yeah, it's rewarding, but being in a paranormal group doing this kind of thing and researching and trying to figure out things and get answers and to help people is extremely rewarding, but it can be it has a level of danger to it, a level of liability to it that people need to be aware of. Yeah.
A bit of a minefield in a lot of ways.
Yes.
We should have summarizing thoughts here. My summarizing thought is that a ghost investigation is, well, I don't even know how I would design one to be conclusive in any way. You're kind of alluding to that. What would be a conclusive investigation? A magnetometer reading, a temperature swing of 3 degrees, how do you... It's just so complicated to try to come up with some definitive... So that completely supports what you have both been arguing. If you do it for experience, to learn, just to see what you learn from undertaking such an endeavor. And... However, I will say that there is one scientific tool, again, used in the most respectful way possible, and I think Isaac, somebody with a sensitivity, that may be the most scientific tool we have in this particular case, you know. And I always make the argument when people say, well, you can't prove anything about anything that we ever talk about, right, Dan, which includes the whole spectrum of the bizarre. And I always point out that, do you believe in the court system, you know, the legal system?
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of testimony, you know, it's based on whether you believe the witness or not. The evidence is the testimony.
It's faith-based, for sure. I mean, you have to have faith in it. Yeah.
The bloody glove, you know. It's not necessarily the smoking gun, to use all those cliches. It's testimony from people and credible witnesses, and the judge bases you know, a decision on that. So when I hear someone like Isaac talking about, here's my impression, I'm completely certain of it in a logical way, you know, that is to me the best evidence in support of something going on in these cases. That's my summarizing thought.
Dan's looking real hard at me. I don't know. He's thinking something.
Well, first of all, I want to thank both of you for being willing to spend some time on October afternoon talking about this. And in my perspective about doing ghost investigations, you're trying to meld a couple of elements together that really maybe don't go together. Mm-hmm. And that is, you've got people with gadgets trying to come up with, and I don't even know if I'd call it scientific evidence, they're just trying to come up with some kind of evidence. And then you have people that have no, like Isaac here, who have, I mean, just their innate personality and who they are as a person, trying to corroborate or not corroborate that evidence. That's a difficult task, to do that in such a way so that you come to any conclusive proof about anything. And maybe that goes back to the notion that it might be questionable to do this type of thing, ghost hunting as an avocation, because do you really want to be responsible for what's going on in somebody's house? You don't really know that you can prove what's going on in somebody's house. But I think it gets at, and this is the last thing I want to say, I think it gets into some pretty integral questions like, what happens to us when we die? What's the meaning of life? I think there's something to be admired in choosing this kind of a hobby or avocation or whatever you want to call it. But I think Dave used the term minefield. I think it's fraught with minefields. But I really want to thank you guys for being a part of this Anomalies episode.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I'm looking forward to hearing it again. And just so Dave knows, I'm going to send you an EVP. We talked earlier about EVPs. I'm going to send you an EVP and see if anybody who listens to our podcast can figure out what's being said on it.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind editing that.
Good.
Okay, cool.
Great. Well, thank you for having us.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
I'm here to listen to you. Tell me who you are.
Yeah.
Why you're here. If you're having fun yet. Tell me who you are.
Yeah.
Tell me who you are.
Yeah.
Tell me who you are.
Yeah.